Hi and welcome to the next video. This is video number 6. So this time we are adding our JWT token that we get from our login request to all the requests that we send against our backend, so except login and register, so that we can always get authenticated by our backend, so that it always knows who we are. And this will be done for like all API requests, also for Socket.io. So that it gets always sent with every request. So the structure is, as always, we look at the outcome, we read the user story, and then we implement the story. And the timestamps are in the description, so you can skip always to the parts that you're interested in. So let's have a quick look what we have done in this video, or what we will do. So for our localhost 4200, we can now log in with the user. So in this case, it's thomas@thomas.de. And we can enter the password, and then we hit our dashboard route, so the private one, and you can see it here. Then we connect to our Socket.io gateway, and we update like our protocols. And you can see it here in our backend. We are logging out that we are actually the user and that we can do something. So you can see it here in our gateway. We are going to this case here, so we decode the token. We get the user, and then we can do something. And if we supply like a false token, then we get immediately disconnected from our gateway. And this also is implemented in Angular, that we add not just a token to all our Socket.io requests, but also we are an interceptor to all our normal requests, I would say, like in easy language. So then we are like ready to implement like the next changes to our application in the next videos. So here's our story for video number 6. So we want to add our JWT authentication handling to Angular. So we want to send with every request we make against our backend the JWT token to authenticate ourselves against our backend. So we have a very simple acceptance criteria. We always want to send the token when we hit our API. So for e.g. just an endpoint or the Socket.io requests. So for this, there is a concept called interceptor in Angular, or nearly it's like a concept that is being applied to every major framework or every bigger code base where you send requests. So you could, for example, Google interceptor, and we could go for Angular, and it transforms the outgoing request before passing to the next. So for example, we can apply an interceptor in our Angular application for all HTTP requests, except for example for login and register, and just add there to the header the authentication token. So then we just have to implement it once, and with every request we are adding like the JWT token. So here for this we can use the Auth or Auth Angular JWT package, and you can see it here. It provides an HTTP interceptor which automatically attaches a JSON web token to our HTTP client request. So for every request we make against our backend, they add the JWT token. To make this, we have to, of course, when we log in, we have to save the JWT token, for example, in a local storage, and then we write a function to get it out of the local storage. And every time we send a request, this package here will get this token from the storage and then attach it to our request against our backend. So we can just install this. For this, we can just cd into our Angular frontend, and then we can install it. And while this is running, we also want to update Angular to the most recent version. So you see it here at the moment we have version 14. We want to go to 15. We have like a basic application, and this is our update guide. So we first want to update Angular core and Angular CLI. So we are just copying this here. And then we run it. Okay, so before we can do this, we have to commit all the stuff that we just did. So we just installed Auth. So we commit this, and then we should be able to update Angular. So just wait a bit. So let's read through it. So next thing, when this is done here, then we have to check that everything works. So here are some changes that are being made from the Angular. And we also want to update, I think, Angular material. So after this here, we have to run ng update Angular material, and then everything should be fine. So now we committed everything, so now we can run the update. And here, let's just wait a bit. And in the meantime, we can also read about, what can we read about? About the Socket.io client. So you remember in the last time in the backend, we implemented the Socket.io server side. So now we want to make a request against this. So we have here our Socket.io client that we can install then when Angular is updated. So this is not working, why not? Let's Google Socket.io client. Actually, I don't know if they have like their certificate to run out of. Let's see, do we have some stuff here? Okay, at the moment we are not able to go to the documentation, but basically with this library or this package, we are able to use some stuff from Socket.io, for example, to make a connection, to send like a message to our backend and so on. And when we install it, we can also apply for our request or our Socket.io request, because this will not be catched by the interceptor because it's a Socket.io request. We can also apply there like our token, so we have to implement this also. So let's just wait for this. Maybe we can find like a Medium article or something in the meantime. So this is basically the server side, so what we just did in nest.js. And in our front end, we are, so let's see, this is the server, and then we have our client side, where we are just using the socket from the IO package that we are installing, and then we are able to say socket on, then send a message, for example, which we just send here. So add to chat, this would be the message, and this would be like the event. Sorry, we are here with on, we are listening to receiving a message from the server, and then we would add this to our chat. So then we just have a list displayed. So this is what we want to do. We import the client library. We then create a connection to our Socket.io or nest.js server. Then we want to see that we always send like the Auth token, the JWT token, so that we get authenticated by the backend. So now the next thing here is we want to update Angular material. And then after this, so we have to commit these changes here again. Then we want to update Angular material, and afterwards we want to install the Socket.io client, and then we can start coding and just implement like the stuff that we just talked about. So socket.io and the Angular JWT interceptor and make a simple connection against our backend. So this is now updating. Let's copy in the socket.io client installation. And then look at our code. So then in our Angular front end, at the moment we have to add then in our app.module. Here you can see we don't have the JWT module here at the moment. And when we go here to the package, we have like a good example. So this is our app module. So we add like a token getter to get the token from the local storage. And then we can initialize this here with a config object where we say how to get the token, so from our local storage. And for example, we want to allow domains or disallow domains, for example, localhost 3000, so our backend. And then this should add always the JWT token. And as you remember, in our public module, in our login service, or our user service here, so don't get disturbed by this, we're just missing the npm install at the moment, so it's not realizing everything here, but this is everything correct. So with the login, you can see it here, we are actually already storing the access token or JWT token that we get from our backend from our login request into our local storage. So this here is like the key that we want to get later with our token or function for our JWT Auth module. So basically we can already start. So it's all here like a little bit slow today, but in our app module we can now add our token getter. And what we can do here to make it a little bit more readable or better is we can say we want to make our key for our local storage, which ready to get. We can make it a constant. So we can local storage key nest.js to do app, and this would be then our nest.js to do app. And then we can just use this const here instead of this value, and the same goes then for our user service, where we can not use this, but we can use our constant. So then they are storing in the same constant as we are using, so in the same for the same key. So I will just run npm install so that all the errors here go away. And now we have to see if everything here is rightly applied, or if we are getting like some issues. So for example, here you can see Angular made some stuff for like legacy. I don't know why use this legacy stuff. So we want to use material card. So we just fix this here up and don't use the legacy stuff. And then some errors should go away. So here we have some stuff. What is it saying? Interesting. but it's definitely here, so we just give it some time. Here everything looks good, I think. So let's just go quickly through all our stuff. Do we have some legacy stuff here? No. No. You can also just search for legacy. So here we have like another import. So now you see all the errors are gone away. So it just needs also some time. So now we are able to continue, and we can now install the Socket.io client also. Sorry for like switching a bit between all the stuff. So what we can do now here, since we just wrote our token getter, now we want to use it, and we can do it exactly like they said in the documentation. So what we want to install is a JWT module. And we say for root, and we just pass in some options. And here we want to have like a config. And for the config, we use our token getter that we just defined. And we can add like allowed domains. And at the moment, we just want to allow our local host on port 3000. Interesting, but it's taking so long time. Maybe we can restart TypeScript. Let this go away, but don't let you get disturbed by this. So now we can, for example, also go to our user service, and we can add for later like a get logged in user. So now the stuff is gone away. So we are going here to our user service, and we add like something to get our logged in user. And here we can just say we get our decoded token. And for this, we can use the JWT service from this package that we just used or installed from the Auth package. So we can just say the JWT service is the JWT helper service from the Auth Angular JWT package. And we can simply here also get the token. So we can say get and decode the token. And then we can just return the decoded token with the user object that we are getting from our backend. And while all this here, we do all the stuff, we can also say docker compose up and start all the stuff. No, we can also do it later, so it doesn't really matter. Yeah. So next we can add like a dashboard component to our private module, because now for all our normal requests we are adding like a JWT with the JWT module from Auth. But we also want to do this for our Socket.io request. So to test this for our private module. So because for our register and login we don't need this, because there we don't need a token, because we just supply some credentials like password, email, and so on. But everything that's happening in the private module should be, like only be accessible if you have like a valid token. So here we want to implement like the stuff for Socket.io. So we can say here we want to have like a components folder or directory, and in this we want to create a dashboard component. So we can, for this, cd into our Angular frontend in our source app private components, and then we can just use the Angular CLI and say ng generate component dashboard. This is now created, and for our private module we can also add like a private routing.module to enable like routing in the web browser, and for this we can then use our dashboard. So we can say here export const routes, and the type is routes from the Angular router, of course, and we can now add here some routes that we want to use, and then we want to export our class. So this is our private routing module, and we annotate this with ng module, and then we can pass in some options again. So we are having like imports, which will be our router module for child, and here we can add the routes that we define at the top in our const, and we also want to export our router module, and then we can import it here so that we are using the routes. So we are importing our private routing module, and then we can say here we are having like our URL path, which should be dashboard, for example, and the component is our dashboard component. And the second thing that we want to do is we want to redirect the people if they are on a completely different path. So we say redirect to, for example, login if the path match is full. So when we have like our routes at the moment for our private module, we can also add like a directory for services. And for our routing to work, we also have to import our private module or route to our private module and lazy load it in our add module, so in the parent module in this case. So here we say path is, for example, it could be private, and then we just make a lazy loading module so that it gets just loaded if you hit this path in your browser. So it's not loaded by default. So here we can then import our private module. Here. And what we can also do at the moment in our login service, we are like logging in, and here we can add like a navigation after login to our dashboard component. So let's see, this would just be our that we need our there it is, our constructor. We have the router, so we can, for example, just say where are we here? That after our login, we are piping this, and then we can just tap, and we navigate to our private route to our dashboard that we just configured. So yeah, the next thing that we want to do is in our services, we want to add here for our private module, our service to call or to make socket.io requests against our backend. So we can just say we want to name this to-do.service.ts. We say export class to-do service. We make it injectable. And provide this in our application. So here we want to set up our socket, so we can import IO from socket.io client. So and then we can pass in here where we are making our requests. So in IO or with our socket, we are going against our HTTP localhost 3000/todos. And we can also, or we need to configure it a bit. So here we can say we want for like every socket request, there's an auth that automatically adds like an authorization token to the request that we can then decode in our backend to authorize us. So the same as adding it like to a header. So we say authorization. And here we just apply our token getter from our add module. And then at the moment we can just make a very easy stuff to test that everything works. So we can just say this.socket.emit message and just test then see in our backend if everything works correctly. So for this to work, we also have to update our front end proxy conf so that all requests to socket.io gets redirected to our API because we are in our Docker container. So here at the moment you see we are only redirecting all API requests, but now we also want to yes. So now we want to also redirect everything to socket.io, and there our target is also our API service. So this is basically the same. So socket.io, this is like always like the path if we are making a socket.io request, and here we also want to redirect this. Then what we also need to add, and in the meantime we can also try to fire it up in our nest.js backend. You remember we had here our gateway for our namespace to-dos, which is what we are using here. So basically the whole stuff would look like that is added automatically, something like this. But this is done automatically by this socket.io client. And in our to-do gateway, we also have to make sure that all our requests that we are making are correct and are landing like there. And for this, we have to enable CORS. And we have to allow our origin. And this is our HTTP localhost 3000 and our HTTP localhost 4200. And then this should work. So at the moment you can see it here from the beginning or from the last video we were just doing the backend and just testing it with Postman. So, but now we are not sending it like in the headers, but we are sending socket.io the handshake, and then we are using the out, and then we named it authorization. So this is needed for to verify the JWT. And here, if you want, we can also log it out, so just to see that everything works correctly. So we can say console.log, and we just log out the authorization object from our socket.io request to see that we send it correctly. So the next thing that we want to do is actually, we now implemented like I think nearly all the stuff we wanted to do, but actually we need to call the request, and we could do this, for example, after the login. When we go to our dashboard component, we could just hit it directly. So for this, we can just implement here like a lifecycle hook on init. So as soon as we initialize this component, we can say ng on init, and provide here private to-do service to make our request against our backend with socket.io, and just say then we want to use our socket.io service to send a message, and then we should be able to see it in our console log, for example, that we are making a request and that it gets authenticated. And later to test it, for example, we can remove here like the token getter, and then see that our request will fail to call our backend, hopefully. And just so you know it, as far as I know, at the moment, Postman is not having like support for this out stuff here. So if you want to test it with Postman, you have to use it like before, to send it in the headers. Yeah, but for us, for code, we can use it like this. This is like a cleaner approach. So I think this here will still take a while. So in the meantime, we can maybe just go a bit over our code. So what we just did, so you see it here, when we hit login from our component, then we get like a token back from our backend. We are saving, here the token in our local storage from the browser and then we have like a key value pair. So our key is our string, and then we have our value, which is also a string, and then we get redirected here to our private dashboard, and in our dashboard we directly call at the moment this to-do service and message, which will send like a socket.io message to our backend, so connected, so we can test this. And for all other HTTP requests that we will send later, we have this token getter here. So with this scalability module, we are adding like an interceptor to all requests that we are making, which will just like take the request, copy the request, and add like the token to the authorization header, so that we get every time we send a request to our backend, we are able to get authenticated. So now like everything here installed, so let's see if it starts correctly. So you can see it here. For our API, everything seems good. And our frontend is now generating. all the modules. So let's see if this will also work correctly. And then we can like register a user, log in, and then see that everything gets logged out correctly here from our in our backend. Where are we? From our gateway, so that we log out, for example, here first the authorization, and then to do something. And if we don't supply authorization, then we should just get disconnected from the socket.io. So here you see frontend built correctly. So we can now go to our localhost 4200, and first we have to register a user. So we could go with Thomas at thomas.de, supply a password, and then register. And now we can log in, and we go with our email and our password. And now you see here in our network, we are making requests against the socket.io and updating our protocol. And you see it here. We are logging out our token. So this is this console log here from our socket.io request when we hit like the dashboard route. So we can remove this now. And here we make do something and log out our user object. So this seems to work really nice. And what we can now, for example, test in our applications, in our front end, when we in our service don't supply like a token getter, but like a false token. And then we hit this backend again. Then you see we immediately get disconnected. So this is working as we expect. So if we have like a correct token, then we are getting connected to our gateway, and we can then do something like in the next video. So for example, like publish a message, listen to a message, or receive a message, and so on. Yeah, so this seems good. So now we can commit everything, and we can say first we can look into our story to see if we made everything. And it was just to send our token all the time, and this is finished. So we can just add this for a message for our commit, and then we can just push everything. I think we also have to include the unversion files, and then we are like done.